Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. All taxpayers now eligible for Identity Protection Pins or PINs. IR 2021-09, January 12th, 2021. There's an IRS video about get an Identity Protection Pin, PIN. It's in both English and Spanish. There's a link to both the English and Spanish presentations here. Washington. The Internal Revenue Service today expanded the Identity Protection PIN option in program to all taxpayers who can verify their identities. The Identity Protection PIN, PIN or IPPIN, IPPIN, is a 6-digit code known only to the taxpayer and the IRS. It helps prevent identity thieves from filing fraudulent tax returns using a taxpayer's personal identification information. So in other words, there's a problem, of course, with people stealing other people's information, their identity. Part of that would be stealing their identity number, which would generally be the social security number. If they have the social security number and the other necessary information, they may then be able to file a fraudulent tax return. And if they file a fraudulent tax return before you file your tax return, then they may be able to get like a refund on it or whatnot. Obviously, when you then try to file your tax return, you will then have a problem because the IRS is going to say, hey, we already got a tax return from somebody that has this identity and this identity number, and then you got to go through a whole big problem. What the IRS usually does to fix that problem is actually to send out another verification code. So now you have to have two verification codes. One, your typical number, which is typically your social security number, but then now you have this other number that you can then use. So you got this double number identification that you will need to use to file your taxes. So that system that they have now, they're going to apply out so that you don't just have to wait till somebody steals your identity and this experience happens to you so that you can get into this program to have that double security identification, but you can sign into it voluntarily so that you can basically have this second number that will make it more difficult for somebody to fraudulate your, tax return for you and cause you that, problem. So back to the text. Quote, this is a way to, in essence, lock your tax account, and the IPPIN serves as a key to opening that account, end quote, said IRS Commissioner Chuck Rettig. Quote, electronic returns that do not contain the correct IPPIN will be rejected, and paper returns will go through additional scrutiny for fraud. So that means that usually if someone was going to steal your identity, they would try to possibly electronically file using some kind of electronic filing process in order to receive a refund. Normally, if they don't get the right social security number and line it up to the name and the address and whatnot, it'll kick it back, meaning you won't be able to get through or process the return in an e-filing process. Now they're going to need not only that number if you're logged into this system, but they're also going to need that second number for the identification purposes. Once again, if you try to file electronically and you don't have those two numbers, then it'll basically kick it back and you won't be able to file. Now, if you paper file, then of course you send it in. So you don't have that same kind of kickback kind of system, but they're still going to have this second level of scrutiny when you paper file. Notice that if people are trying to commit fraud using a tax return, filing a fraudulent tax return and then getting the refund from it, they're probably going to try to do it early because they're going to try to file before the actual taxpayer files the tax return. Because if the taxpayer files first, then their number will get bounced back because it will already be used. So they're going to try to most likely file before the other person, file early so that they can then get access and use the fraudulent information to do so. So the IRS launched the IPPIN program nearly a decade ago to protect confirmed identity theft victims from ongoing tax-related fraud. In recent years, the IRS expanded the program to specific states where taxpayers could voluntarily opt into the IPPIN program. Now the voluntary program is going nationwide. About the IPPIN opt-in program. Here are a few key things to know about the IPPIN opt-in program. This is a voluntary program, so it's voluntary, you don't have to do it. You must pass a rigorous identity verification process. Spouses and dependents are eligible for an IPPIN if they can verify their identities. An IPPIN is valid for a calendar year. So that's important to note. Once you do the IPPIN and you verify 1 year, that doesn't mean you're good for life there. It's a year by year thing. And of course, just like when updating your passwords and whatnot, it's a whole lot more secure that way because you're going to have to update your IPPIN, which is the thing that's going to help save your security. So it is something that you need to keep up with on a yearly basis in order to contain or keep in with that added level of protection against the fraud. You must obtain a new IPPIN each filing season. The online IPPIN tool is offline between November and mid-January each year. Correct IPPINs must be entered on the electronic and paper tax returns to avoid rejections and delays. Never share your IPPIN with anyone but your trusted tax provider. The IRS will never call, text, or email requesting your IPPIN. So just like with your social security number, you could get spamming kind of information for it, although it's much less likely that you will with the IPPIN than like your standard like social security number, because it's a new thing and it's a double verification type of process. But obviously you want to try, don't share the IPPIN, and if you get, phishing emails related to it, then you got to be aware of the phishing emails. You can't trust anybody these days. But anyway, beware of scams and steal your IPPIN. There currently is no opt-out option, but the IRS is working on one for 2022. So once you're in, you might say, well, what if I want to opt out? Then, it'd be nice if there was an opt-out option just in case you decide that you want to kind of opt out into it. So they're working on that. So how to get an IPPIN. Taxpayers who want an IPPIN for 2021 should go to the irs.gov/IPPIN. There's a link to that here, and use the Get an IPPIN tool. This online process will require taxpayers to verify their identities using the Secure Access Authentication process if they do not already have an IRS account. The irs.gov/security access, there's a link to that here, for what information you need to be successful. So you want to visit this one first to say, hey, what do I need in order to do the process, so that when you actually register, you got everything you need in front of you and you don't have to go back and forth. So there is no need to file a Form 14039, an identity theft affidavit, to opt into the program. So before you had to basically do that because it was kind of a fix type of thing, but now it's a proactive type of thing. So before you had to kind of say, hey, there was identity theft and file Form 14039. I got to do something about this. I want this double verification thing. But now you can opt in before someone steals your identity. So once taxpayers have authenticated their identities, their 2021 IPPIN immediately will be revealed to them. Once in the program, this PIN must be used when prompted by electronic returns or entered by hand near the signature line on the paper tax returns. So all taxpayers are encouraged to first use the online IPPIN tool to obtain their IPPIN. Taxpayers who cannot verify their identities online do have options. So when trying to get your IPPIN, they want to do it virtually, not by paper filing, but if for whatever reason you can't do it that way, then you have other options. Taxpayers whose adjusted gross income is $72,000 or less may complete Form 15227. There's a link to Form 15227 here. Application for an identity protection personal identification number, and mail or fax to the IRS. An IRS customer service representative will contact the taxpayer and verify their identities by phone. Taxpayers should have their prior year tax return at hand for the verification process. Taxpayers who verify their identities through this process will have an IPPIN mailed to them the following tax year. This is for security reasons. Once in the program, the IPPIN will be mailed to these taxpayers each year. So once you're set up, once you're in, the IPPIN will change each year, unlike your social security number, right? Which is kind of, you've had it since you've been a baby, and you might, someone might have got it in that point of time, especially since you're required to give it out like multiple times. So, but the IPPIN, it changes each year, and it should be somewhat easy, because if they just send you a new number each year, then it doesn't sound too burdensome to deal with. So it looks pretty good so far. So in any case, taxpayers who cannot verify their identities online or by phone and who are ineligible for File Form 15227 can contact the IRS and make an appointment at the Taxpayer Assistance Center to verify their identities in person. So if you can't do it online and you're not able to do it by form because of whatever reason, possibly income levels, then you can actually go visit the tax center and see if you can get your identity verified that way, which would help for the qualification process. Taxpayers should bring 2 forms of identification, including 1 government-issued picture identification. Taxpayers who verify their identities through the in-person process will have an IPPIN mailed to them within 3 weeks. Once in the program, the IPPIN will be mailed to these taxpayers each year. No change for confirmed identity theft victims. So if you've already had the identity theft and you've had to go through this process, then it's kind of the same process. It's really, they're taking that process and expanding it in a proactive way at this point. So taxpayers who are confirmed identity theft victims or who have filed an identity theft affidavit because of suspected stolen identity refund fraud will automatically receive an IPPIN via mail once their cases are resolved. Current tax-related identity theft victims who have been receiving IPPINs via mail will experience no change. See irs.gov/IPPIN. There's a link to that here for additional details. The IRS also encourages tax professionals and employers to share information with taxpayers about the availability of the IPPIN. Tax professionals and employers can print or email Publication 5367, there's a link to that here, or share IRS social media /e-poster products. Wow, you can get the poster products. In any case, so there's links to that publication here and links to the various places where you can look into the IPPIN on this webpage. There's a link to this webpage in the description.